Today you are going to learn a strategy to solve for the missing number. So in our last lesson, we had a box that we filled in with the missing number, but today that box is the letter X. And I'm going to show you a strategy, and you might be like, this is doing the most work, but it's going to be very helpful if we have integers or negative numbers, or when we get to 2-step equations and 3 steps and 4 steps and 5 steps. We have to have a way to organize what we are doing so we don't forget the answer. Okay, so we have some number plus 3 is 17. So we can probably figure it out, but let's show it mathematically. Where the equal sign is, I have these two lines. Sometimes people call them railroad tracks, but it's like the balance. And whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Otherwise, one would be heavier than the other. So our goal is to get X by itself. So with that X, we have plus 3. We have to undo that. So we're going to do the opposite. And in math, we call that the inverse. So it's like the opposite in terms of verbs. So if you add 3 and you're like, oops, that was wrong, you would subtract 3 to undo it. So I'm going to put subtract 3 on both sides. So on the left here, 3 minus 3 is 0. 0 is nothing. So I don't need that anymore. I'm left with just the X. Then on the right side, 17 minus 3 is 14. And for some reason, my text box disappeared. So here we go. I'll write it in with that. All right, for number 2, we have X minus 8 equals 10. So the inverse of subtraction is addition. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. 0 is nothing, so I don't need that 8 anymore. I'm left with just the X. Then on the right side, 10 plus 8 is 18. All right. I'm going to try to go to my next slide where there's hopefully some negatives. Nope. Here we go. All right. So for this one here, number 13, we have X plus 7. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 7, and I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. 7 minus 7 is 0 or nothing, so I don't need that anymore. I'm left with just the X on the left. On the right, I have negative 3 minus 7. So I could either go in the negative direction 3 and in the negative direction 7 more, or I can change it to negative 3 plus positive 7. I can change it to addition and add the opposite. So either way, I'm combining a negative 3 and a negative 7. If they're playing tug of war, all of those negatives are on the same team, and we're going to have a team of negative 10. All right, number 14 here. So we have X minus 5. To get rid of that 5 that is with the X, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. That leaves us with just X. And negative 8 plus 5. So if I'm on a number line at negative 8, and I go 5 to the right, I would end up at negative 3. All right, now be careful. Sometimes the X is on the other side. So for this one, the X is on the right. And with that X, it says plus 5. So I'm going to minus 5. And I have to do the same thing on both sides. So 5 minus 5 is 0. That leaves us with just the X on the right. And then negative 7 minus 5. That would mean I start at negative 7 on the number line and I go more negative 5 times. Or I have 7 players on the negative team and 5 more players on the negative team. So altogether, that would be negative 12. Okay, I'm going to show you today's assignment really quick. All right, for today's assignment. So on the side with the variable, which is the X, you want to do the inverse operation. So the inverse of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to choose subtract 4. So I have to click on this little arrow here, and I have to do the same thing on both sides. And yes, you have to show your work. All right, those would cancel out, and that would make 0, which leaves us with just the x. And then the final answer will go in the bluish colored box. 17 minus 4 is 13. You have to have the work shown plus the answer to get the star. If you only put the answer, that star will not appear. All right, so just be careful. Sometimes that x is on the left and sometimes it's on the right. So for this one, you'd look at this side and you choose the inverse of addition. So you would choose subtract 3 from both sides.